The reason I bring these things up is because I think now I really wanted to talk about kind of what's next in Courtney and I's lives, kind of me in ministry wise, is that I'm after September going to be stepping away from worship ministry. And the reason for that is Rob and I had a huge falling out. And I was kidding. I swore to myself that if I ever was able to talk about it publicly, I was going to say that in front of you. No, there was no falling out at all. But I think this will come probably to a shock to a lot of people, especially people that back in Searcy at home and Jonesboro I went to college with. Because, again, my path for career-wise was in ministry at one point. And so I think a couple of things I wanted to say. One, Courtney and I aren't going anywhere. We're still going to be at Crossgate, very much so. And I'll talk about that, kind of what we're thinking of next there in a minute. And two, there was no falling out. There was no it's actually pretty boring. Why? So I would say that there's no drama that people would find interesting in that. So everybody, you're fine. But a few people know this, and everyone but me has had a really hard time with this. I let people know. I think I know that Brian and the pastor at Crossgate at the time, I let know last September, and I said I'm going to give one more year, and then I'm going to bow out of worship ministry. So it was like a decision that was made a long time, was prayed about, and was thought through, and it's been a year that people have known to start working in the direction of what do we do after I'm stepping down, which there's a great plan in place, and I'm really excited about that. But I found out that even 2 weeks ago, Courtney was even kind of like, oh, I didn't know you were serious. I was like, what do you mean you didn't know I was serious? I've been saying this for the last year now. And then Devin's wife, Brittany, was just like, no, you won't. No, you won't. I'm like, yes, this is really happening. But even my friends and family were like, oh, you'll change your mind or something. And I'm like, no, my passion and my focus have shifted. And to be honest, one reason is because of identity. And it's because it is so easy for me to get up there on Sunday morning and do the thing, and everybody will think, all right, he's good, right? He's fine. I could get away with not being authentic just by getting up there, leading worship. I have musical talents. I have the ability to do that, and everybody would just think that I was good. And it's not the case. I think over the last few years, I've just been feeling like I don't want to be pigeonholed. I have other talents that I would like to use in service of the church, Big C type church, and of the church here, that I enjoy more as well. And then when you and I first started meeting back in the day, like I said, my career path was in vocational ministry.
Right.
And even to the point that you and I were starting to talk about okay, well, here's kind of a timeline of when I'm going to be leaving worship ministry, going into marriage ministry. And it was oh, well, I'm going to be moving into town close to then. And we're well, maybe it would work out where I could come be worship pastor there. And we had a couple of conversations. And then the last couple of conversations, I think you and Pastor Sean had asked 3 different times of hey, are you sure that you're a no on this? And and it took Courtney very much by surprise as well, that I was I really feel God calling me to not go that path, and calling me to this career path of kind of in technology and product management now, and there's such a need there in the business world as well. And I've had great opportunities there, and it's been really great, the kind of environment and everything that I'm in there. But yeah, it was a strange decision back then to say no, because to be honest, since Courtney and I were engaged, we had talked about that would just be that would be it. Like, that's the mountaintop right there, is for me to be worship pastor of Crossgate, or a church like Crossgate. It'd be even better if we could be in Hot Springs to do that. And to say no to that took a bit for people to get used to. It didn't take a bit for me to get used to, but people around me. And so I think the decision started even then, of like, I don't necessarily want to be have my full identity wrapped up in that. And I think it's more of a check for myself to be like, is my identity wrapped up in that? Am I just getting away with doing that? And so part of this transition is kind of checking that too.
Well, you know, I would say, Matt, I would. It's difficult to make those decisions. You know, even when you've prayed through it, mm-hmm. you feel like God is leading you in a certain direction. We're still human beings. And so when people come at us, you know, and they're like, well, why would you do that? You know, you have, and because here's the reality, you know, I even felt that way. I mean, I felt that way when you turned down that position initially, mm-hmm. and then even here recently, you know, when, you know, and I was like, you know, your first thought is, okay, well, what's wrong? You know?
Yeah.
You know,
that's everybody's first question is, what happened?
What happened?
It's like, well, nothing. My focus and passion of it.
Well, and probably it's that way because usually that is the case, right? So, so we think
there's usually some type of drama there.
Yeah. I mean, something has happened. But sometimes, you know, things, they just are that way. It's how God is leading you. And we, you know, and I mean, if I had not gone through some of my own experiences and transitions, and I mean, and even now doing something different here at the church, you know, or just, I guess, not different, just an addition, more responsibilities, additional things, then I probably would have come and said, man, you know, don't do this, you know, I mean, because you do. I mean, God's given you great skills, but in the area of worship and leading in that regard, and He has given you great talent there, and so, but it doesn't define you, and you have other skills and abilities, and so, you know, I applaud, you know, your willingness to, you know, the best you know how, you are seeking God's direction for your next steps. And I think that's never a bad thing.
Right.
And even, you know, and who knows what, you know, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it could be a totally different direction. And so,
I think that's good too. So one thing that I think people have a hard time with change, and especially when it's something perceived as drastic change. But like, the more I'm around human beings, the more I'm like, we change year to year, like probably in smaller ways. But like, my interests now, Courtney and I were talking about this after Reengage, or during Reengage, it was like, our interests individually now are different than our interests when we first got married. Mm-hmm. And so part of that is just kind of like talking about how individually and in our marriage we grow and change. And so I don't think it's a bad thing for interests in things to change in terms of interests in ministry. I think there's definitely, in my own experience, a clear calling where God's putting something on your heart, grows something. Yes. And it is a slower thing, like kind of like you moving from worship to marriage. It's like it happens over maybe a year or more, where like that kind of grows, and then you're like, okay, this is very clear now. Mm-hmm. And so that's definitely been the case here. And initially last September, when I said I would do one more year, I wasn't exactly sure what it was, but one of the things that's been on my heart is there's a few reasons and a few things that I'm really looking forward to in this. One is doing ministry with Courtney. That's not something we've done a lot. I know Tula has been a huge part of the worship ministry as you were working in worship ministry, from playing piano, singing, and working in the office with you there. Right. And one thing that Courtney's always been like, I can't play piano. I hope you know. That's actually what she told me when we were dating. She was like, I can't play piano like Tula can. I hope you're not expecting that. I was like, no, I'm not expecting that. Why would I do that? And she's run words sometimes, but like we've never really done ministry together. And I'm in a point now where, because I have a career outside of ministry, we're at a place where we can do that, and I'm looking forward to that. I think to strengthen our own marriage, and that really became clear during Reengage. Is like, if we were to do ministry together, I think it would be really great. And when I started bringing that up to Courtney, it was something great happened. She was like, well, I've actually been thinking about this idea for a while. And she was like, it probably something we can't do or whatever. But she was like, I've been really, like, she works as a physical therapist with kids that have autism and kids with cerebral palsy and kids with mental disorders as well. And she has seen that, like, their families just don't go to church a lot of times because they have this anxiety of always feeling like, I'm going to get called from the nursery. It's not even worth it to go in the worship services because I'm not going to be able to actually focus there. Right. And her heart has just been pouring out to these people. And I was like, that actually sounds like a great idea. And one of the skills that I have, aside from being able to work in worship, is I love building products and building, like, I love the business side of my career. I wish I took business classes in school so I could have learned some of that sooner. But I really enjoy, like, building a thing and seeing it, like, how do we build a process so that things run efficiently and do that. And so I'm been looking for an opportunity to build something, like maybe build a ministry, and she's coming in with this. And so our idea is, in September, we want to talk with Matthew and just kind of talk about, like, what might this look like. And so that's also something, like, we could do together, and it feeds my interest, feeds her interest. And we've also been, by the way, if anybody sees us at other churches, just know that we're going to research other churches that have these ministries to see what they do. Not because we're leaving Crossgate. Nobody get weird with it. But we're starting to go to other churches and just kind of look at what they're doing in their ministry, their special needs ministry. And that's been really fascinating to kind of see all these families that have come in because now there's people in place that know how to take care of their children. And the children are still with other kids their age. They're still in the same classrooms, but they have a buddy with them, that can take them out and step out for a minute if they need to, and really help the volunteers that are working with that classroom. I'm super excited about that. And Courtney is too. Like, we talk about it all the time. And even the North American Mission Board is labeled special needs community as the number 4 unreached people on their unreached people group list. I was mind blown. I was like, really? And it's exciting because that's, like, right here, right? Like, we've got little kids, and so it's hard for us to, like, maybe do a mission trip to Africa together right now, although we're really looking forward to the days when we can do that. But we're like, okay, so this is, like, right here. We even know, like, because of her work, some of the people that do that, even some physical therapists in the community have talked, like, oh, if you do that, I would love to come and, like, help with that. And, like, so I'm hoping we get people engaged in helping and bringing them and their families into church as well. That's kind of what we're thinking is next. I also am looking forward to this podcast, doing this maybe more than once a month, talking with men and about, men of faith and ministry and business and all these other contexts, and then mentoring some of the guys that in their 20s that I'm kind of mentoring as well. That's what's kind of coming next. which I don't know how much of that you knew. By the way, you want to start a new ministry, if you could support that, that'd be great.